The moment the delicate stem of the wildflower brushed against his palm, David's world tilted on its axis. He stared down at the bloom, its petals a soft riot of yellow and white, plucked fresh from the earth by his daughter's small hands. Emily's eyes, wide and earnest, locked onto his, pleading without words. "For you, Dad," she whispered, her voice barely cutting through the thick summer air in the backyard of her grandparents' home in Oakwood, Illinois. It was supposed to be a simple visit, a reluctant drop-in after months of avoidance, but that flower, innocent, unassuming, cracked open the vault of emotions he'd buried deep. The divorce had been final for over a year, a clean cut through what was left of his marriage to Sarah. But here, in this overgrown garden, the past rushed back like a flood. David felt his throat tighten, the weight of unspoken regrets pressing down. How had it come to this? A 10-year-old girl trying to mend what 2 adults had shattered. Emily had always been the light in their stormy family. Even as a toddler, she'd had this uncanny way of sensing tension, diffusing it with a hug or a silly drawing. But the divorce had dimmed her spark. When Sarah and David finally called it quits after years of arguments, over money, over time, over everything and nothing, she'd been shuttled off to live with her grandparents, Tom and Linda, in their quiet Midwestern town. Oakwood was the kind of place where everyone knew your business, where porches creaked under the weight of rocking chairs and evenings were marked by the hum of cicadas. It was a far cry from the chaotic Chicago suburb where Emily had grown up, with its endless traffic and towering apartments. The move was meant to give her stability, but to Emily, it felt like being uprooted from her soil, left to wither in unfamiliar ground. Her grandparents' house sat on a generous plot, backed by a garden that Linda had tended for decades. It wasn't manicured like the ones in magazines. It was wild, alive, a tangle of perennials and herbs that fought for space under the shade of ancient maples. Tomatoes ripened on vines that climbed old fences, and bees danced around clusters of lavender. Emily discovered it on her first day there, wandering out back while Tom fixed lunch and Linda unpacked her things. The garden called to her, a secret world where she could hide from the ache of missing her parents. She'd sit among the flowers, pulling weeds absent-mindedly, imagining each root she tugged as a piece of the anger that had torn her family apart. As weeks turned to months, Emily's sadness hardened into resolve. She overheard her grandparents whispering one night, Tom's gravelly voice saying, "Those 2 need to get their heads straight for the girl's sake," and Linda replying, "It's not our place." But Lord knows Emily's paying the price. It stung, but it also sparked something. If her parents wouldn't fix things, maybe she could. The idea came to her while she was planting marigold seeds with Linda one afternoon. "Gardens teach patience," Linda had said, patting the soil gently. "You give them love, and they give back beauty." Emily's mind raced. What if she created a special spot in the garden? A place for healing? She called it the unity plot in her head, a patch where her parents could come together, plant something side by side, and remember they were still a family, even if not in the same house. She started small, clearing a sunny corner near the old swing set. With Tom's help, she turned the soil, mixing in compost that smelled rich and earthy. Linda donated seedlings, zinnias for Sarah, because they were bright and resilient, just like her mom, snapdragons for David, tall and bold like him. Emily added her own touch, forget-me-nots, tiny blue flowers that symbolized enduring love. She worked in secret mostly, her small hands blistering from the shovel, but the pain felt purposeful. Each evening, as the sun dipped low, casting golden hues over the garden, she'd whisper to the earth, "Grow strong. Help them see." It was childish magic, but to Emily, it was real. The letters were next. She spent hours at the kitchen table, crayons and paper scattered around. To David. Dad. I made a special place in Grandma's garden. It's for us. I planted snapdragons for you because they're brave like you.
Come see?
I love you. To Sarah. Mom. The garden is magic. I put zinnias in for you. Pretty and strong. Please come. Miss you so much. She sealed them with stickers of hearts and flowers, mailing them off with pocket money saved from chores. Her heart pounded as she dropped them in the box. Would they come? Would they care? David received his in his cramped apartment overlooking the Chicago skyline. He was midway through a stack of work emails when the envelope caught his eye. Emily's loopy handwriting, a stark contrast to the sterile printouts. He opened it carefully, the drawing of a garden spilling out colors onto his desk. Reading her words, a pang hit him hard. He'd thrown himself into his job as a financial analyst after the divorce, using overtime as armor against the guilt. Sarah had accused him of being absent, and maybe she was right. But seeing Emily's plea, the innocence in her sketch, it unraveled him. He stared out the window, the city lights blurring. How had he let it get this bad? Sarah got hers at her cozy townhouse on the outskirts of the city. She was folding laundry when it arrived, the scent of fabric softener mixing with a faint floral smell from the envelope. Her hands shook as she read. Sarah worked as a teacher, shaping young minds. But her own life felt like a lesson in failure. The divorce had left her bitter, replaying arguments in her head. Yet Emily's note pierced through that wall. Pretty and strong, the girl had written. Sarah wiped a tear, thinking of the nights she'd cried herself to sleep. Maybe it was time to face it for Emily. Neither parent responded right away. Doubt crept in. What if the other didn't show? What if it reopened old wounds? But Emily's hope was a force they couldn't ignore. A week later, on a crisp Saturday, David's SUV crunched into the driveway just as Sarah's sedan pulled up. They locked eyes through windshields, surprise turning to awkward tension. Emily, watching from the porch, burst out the door, her sneakers kicking up dust. You came, both of you. She grabbed their hands, pulling them toward the garden before protests could form. The unity plot gleamed in the sunlight, seedlings peeking through the soil like tiny promises. Emily had bordered it with smooth river stones she'd collected, each painted with words, love, forgive, together. A handmade sign read, Plant here to heal. David and Sarah stood there, the air heavy with unspoken history. Emily's voice trembled with excitement. This is for our family. If we plant something together, maybe things can grow better. She handed them trowels and a packet of mixed seeds. David knelt first, his dress shirt sleeves rolled up, digging into the dirt. Sarah joined hesitantly, her fingers brushing his as they worked. The act was simple, but in that shared silence, something shifted, a thaw in the ice that had encased their hearts. As they patted the soil over the seeds, Emily watered them gently. See? It's starting. David looked at Sarah. Really looked, seeing the fatigue in her eyes that mirrored his own. Sarah met his gaze, a flicker of the old warmth there. For Emily, it was enough. The garden had begun its work. The afternoons stretched lazily after the planting, but none of them moved to leave. David wiped his hands on his jeans, glancing at the unity plot with a mix of skepticism and something softer, nostalgia. Perhaps. Sarah lingered by the zinnias, fingering a leaf as if it held answers. Emily, sensing the fragile peace, suggested they stay for lunch. Grandma made her famous potato salad, she said, her tone light but insistent. Tom and Linda, ever the gracious hosts, had anticipated this, setting extra places at the outdoor picnic table under the maple tree. The meal was simple: grilled chicken, fresh corn from the garden, and that creamy potato salad, but it felt monumental. For the first time since the divorce papers were signed, David and Sarah sat across from each other without lawyers or accusations between them. Conversation started haltingly. Emily filled the gaps with chatter about school in Oakwood, how different it was from the big city classes, but quieter, nicer. "We have a recess where we can play in the fields," she said, buttering her corn. David nodded, forcing a smile. "Sounds peaceful. Better than dodging traffic." Sarah added, "I bet you make lots of friends." Emily beamed, but her eyes darted between them, gauging. Under the table, her foot tapped nervously. As plates emptied, Tom steered the talk to neutral ground, the garden's history. "Linda's been at it since we moved here in '85, he said, sipping iced tea. "Started with just a few rose bushes. Now look at it." Linda chuckled. "It's therapy. Really. Pull a weed. Let go of a worry." The words hung, and Sarah bit her lip. "I could use some of that." David shifted. Uncomfortable. He'd never been one for introspection. Work was his escape. But here, surrounded by the scent of blooming jasmine, he felt exposed. After lunch, Emily tugged them back to the garden. "Let's check on the seeds." Though nothing had changed visibly, she knelt and inspected, her enthusiasm infectious. David joined her, pointing out a sprout. "Look at that, already fighting through." Sarah watched, a small smile creeping in. Resilient little things. As the sun climbed higher, they wandered the paths. Emily shared her discoveries: the birdhouse Tom built, the herb patch where mint overran everything. "Smell this," she said, crushing a leaf between her fingers. David inhaled, the fresh scent triggering a memory, their honeymoon in Vermont. Walks through wild meadows. He glanced at Sarah, her expression suggested she remembered too. The afternoon wore on with small tasks. David helped Tom repair a loose fence post, hammering nails with a rhythm that eased his mind. Sarah assisted Linda in pruning roses, the clippers snipping away dead branches like old grudges. Emily flitted between, her laughter bridge. By evening, fatigue set in, but so did a reluctant comfort. They gathered on the porch as dusk fell, fireflies blinking in the garden like tiny lanterns. Emily brought out a mason jar she'd prepared, labeled heart notes. "It's like a wish jar, but for feelings," she explained. "Write something you want to let go of or something good." David raised an eyebrow, but Sarah took a slip first. She scribbled quickly, folding it tight. "Okay. Mine's in." Emily clapped. David hesitated, then wrote, "Regret for the time lost." He dropped it in, the clink echoing softly. Sarah's note? She kept it private, but her eyes softened. That night, after Emily went to bed, David and Sarah found themselves alone on the porch. Tom and Linda had discreetly retreated inside. The silence was thick, broken only by crickets. "This was unexpected," David finally said. Sarah nodded. "Emily's got a way of pulling strings." They talked then, tentatively, about work, about the loneliness that had settled in post-divorce. No blame, just sharing. "I didn't realize how much I missed this," Sarah admitted, staring at the garden. David swallowed. "Me too." It wasn't a reconciliation. Not yet. But it was a crack in the wall. The next morning brought rain, a soft patter that nourished the soil. Emily woke excited, rushing out to see the Unity plot glistening. "It's drinking it all in." David, who'd stayed over on the couch, joined her with coffee in hand. Sarah, in the guest room, emerged tousle-haired. They ate breakfast together, pancakes stacked high. The rain kept them indoors, leading to board games, Monopoly, where Emily bankrupted them all with glee. Laughter bubbled up. genuine and freeing. As the storm cleared, they returned to the garden. Mud squelched underfoot, but Emily didn't care. She showed them how to mulch, spreading bark around the plants. Hands sturdy, they worked as a unit. David and Sarah's shoulders brushed, a spark of old familiarity. By afternoon, more talks emerged. David confessed his fears. I thought staying away was better for her. Sarah shared hers. I was too angry to see straight. Emily, eavesdropping nearby, felt a warmth bloom in her chest. Days blurred into a week. David took time off work. Sarah rearranged her schedule. They helped with chores. David mowed the lawn. Sarah baked pies with fruit from the garden. Evenings brought more heart notes, gratitudes. Apologies slipped in anonymously. The jar filled, a tangible measure of progress. One night, under a full moon, Emily led a garden walk. They strolled paths lit by solar lights, sharing stories. David recalled their first date. Sarah laughed at the memory. Emily squeezed between them, holding hands. The unity plot thrived, sprouts turning to stems.
So did they.
But tension simmered beneath. Old habits died hard. One evening, an argument flared over nothing. Really? A misplaced comment about finances. Voices rose. Emily's face crumpling. She ran to the garden, curling by the plot. David and Sarah followed, guilt-stricken. We're messing this up again, David muttered. Sarah knelt beside Emily. No,
Sweetie.
we're trying. Emily looked up, tears streaking. Just plant more. Keep growing. They did. Adding herbs that night. The act cooled tempers, reminded them why they were there. As the week ended, decisions loomed. David and Sarah sat with Tom and Linda. Emily's shown us something, David said. We can't go back to ignoring it. Plans formed, co-parenting better, visits, maybe counseling. Emily overheard, her heart soaring. The garden had worked its magic, not perfect, but real. With the initial visit stretching into an unplanned stay, the rhythm of life in Oakwood began to weave David and Sarah back into a tentative family tapestry. Emily woke each morning with a buzz of anticipation, checking the Unity plot first thing. The zinnias and snapdragons pushed higher, their leaves unfurling like flags of victory. Look how tall they are, she'd exclaim, dragging whoever was nearest to see. David, growing accustomed to the slower pace, started joining her for these dawn inspections. He'd ruffle her hair, saying, You're the green thumb here, kiddo. Sarah,
Meanwhile,
found solace in the routine, helping Linda harvest veggies, chopping them for salads that tasted of earth and effort. The garden became their neutral ground, a place where words flowed easier amid the rustle of leaves. One afternoon, as they weeded together, David opened up about the divorce's toll. I buried myself in work because facing the failure hurt too much, he admitted, yanking a stubborn dandelion. Sarah paused, her trowel hovering. I did the same with anger. It was easier than admitting I still cared. Emily, nearby watering the forget-me-nots, pretended not to listen, but her smile grew. These confessions, small at first, built like layers of soil, fertile ground for understanding. Tom and Linda observed with quiet wisdom. Over coffee one morning, Tom clapped David on the back. Gardens don't bloom overnight.
takes time. Rain.
Sun. Linda nodded, her eyes on Sarah. And a little faith. They shared stories of their own marriage, storms weathered, lessons learned. It normalized the struggle, made it less isolating. Emily expanded her ideas. She created a memory vine, a trellis where they hung photos from happier times, printed from old albums Linda dug out. There was David and Sarah's wedding, Emily's first steps, Family picnics.
See?
We have roots, Emily said, pinning one up. David traced a photo with his finger, voice thick. We do, Sarah added. Let's not let them wither. Evenings evolved into rituals. After dinner, they'd gather by the fire pit Tom built, roasting marshmallows. Stories turned to dreams. Emily wanted to be a botanist. David confessed he'd always dreamed of writing a novel but shelved it for stability. Sarah yearned to travel again. The heart notes jar overflowed. Notes read aloud sometimes, thankful for second chances, sorry for the harsh words. Vulnerability bred closeness. But healing wasn't linear. A call from David's boss interrupted one day, demanding his return. Tensions spiked. You always choose work, Sarah snapped, old resentment flaring. David retorted. And you always assume the worst. Emily, hearing the raised voices, felt her world crack. She fled to the Unity plot, tears watering the soil. When they found her, huddled there, guilt washed over them. I'm sorry.
David Saij.
Kneeling. Sarah joined. We both are. Emily wiped her eyes. Promise to try harder? They did, sealing it with a group hug amid the flowers. That setback prompted action. Sarah suggested family therapy. David agreed. They found a counselor in town. Sessions starting that week. In the garden between appointments, they processed, David learning to prioritize, Sarah to release grudges. Emily attended some. Her insights piercing. Love's like plants. Neglect it, it dies. Care for it, it thrives. As summer deepened, the garden exploded in color. Butterflies flocked to the blooms. A living metaphor. Neighbors noticed the changes, David and Sarah walking hand in hand sometimes. Emily's constant glow. One evening, they hosted a small barbecue. Friends from Oakwood came, sharing laughs. It felt normal.
Whole.
Yet deeper layers emerged. David revealed a secret he'd carried, the real reason for his distance, fear of repeating his own parents' failed marriage. I thought pulling away protected you both. Sarah shared hers. Postpartum depression after Emily's birth had strained things early, unspoken until now. These truths, aired in the garden's safety, lightened burdens. Emily's confidence grew. She started a journal, sketching plants and noting family growth. Day 32, Dad and Mom laughed together for 10 minutes straight. Milestones mattered. By midsummer, decisions crystallized. David looked for jobs closer to Oakwood. Sarah considered relocating. Not reuniting romantically yet, but coexisting for Emily. One night, stargazing in the garden, David turned to Sarah. What if we tried again? Slowly. Sarah's heart raced. Maybe. For us. Not just her. Emily, pretending to sleep nearby, smiled into the darkness. The Unity plot, now a riot of flowers, stood as proof. What started as a child's whim had rooted deep, pulling them together. As petals unfurled and days lengthened, the transformation in Oakwood deepened. The Unity plot wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. A vibrant mosaic that drew admirers from the neighborhood. Emily led tours proudly, explaining each flower's meaning. These are for strength, those for joy. David and Sarah, now regulars, contributed. David built a bench from reclaimed wood. Sarah painted bird feeders. The garden evolved into a family project, each addition a step toward unity. Therapy sessions bore fruit. The counselor praised their progress. You're communicating, not combating.
At home.
They practiced date nights in town, walks where they discussed futures without fear. Emily noticed the changes, fewer silences, more touches. You're like the vines, twining together, she said one day. Beaming. Challenges persisted. Sarah's job demanded a trip back to Chicago, stirring insecurities. What if distance pulls us apart again? She worried. David reassured her over a garden picnic. We've got roots now. They'll hold. Emily added a note to the jar. Faith in the growth. When Sarah returned, they celebrated with a bonfire, burning old divorce papers symbolically, ashes enriching the soil. Community involvement grew. Emily's school project on gardens inspired a class visit. Kids marveled. Teachers commended. It boosted her self-esteem, healing her own wounds. David volunteered to speak on work-life balance. Sarah shared teaching tips. Oakwood embraced them. Intimacy rekindled slowly. A shared glance over coffee. A hand on the small of a back. One evening, alone in the garden as Emily helped inside, David kissed Sarah softly. I've missed you. She reciprocated, tears mingling. Me too. It wasn't rushed, it was real. Emily's 10th birthday approached. She requested a garden party. Invites to all. Decorations from the plot. They strung lights. Set tables with floral centerpieces. Guests arrived. Neighbors. Friends. Even extended family. Laughter echoed as Emily blew out candles on a cake topped with edible flowers. Toasts followed, Tom's proud. Linda's tearful. David and Sarah announced, we're giving this another shot. Cheers erupted. Emily hugged them tight. Best gift ever. Post-party. Under stars. They reflected. The jar, now a tradition, held hundreds of notes. Reading random ones brought laughs and tears. The Unity plot, illuminated, seemed alive with possibility. Months later, as fall hinted, they harvested. Pumpkins from vines, herbs dried for winter. It symbolized reaping what they'd sown. David moved in temporarily. Sarah commuted. Plans for a shared home solidified. Emily, journaling, wrote, the garden taught us love grows with care. We're blooming. The birthday party was a whirlwind of colors and scents. The garden transformed into a wonderland. String lights twinkled like captured stars, weaving through the branches of the maples. Tables groaned under platters of fresh salads from the harvest, tomatoes bursting with juice, cucumbers crisp and cool. Emily, in a sundress patterned with flowers, darted among guests, her laughter pealing like bells. David manned the grill, flipping burgers with a grin he hadn't worn in years. Sarah arranged bouquets, her movements graceful, at ease. As the sun set, painting the sky in oranges and pinks, the party hit its stride. Kids played tag among the beds, careful not to trample. Adults chatted, sharing stories of their own family trials. Tom raised a glass. To Emily, the heart of this home. Linda added, and to new beginnings. David and Sarah's announcement hushed the crowd, then sparked applause. Emily's eyes shone. This was her dream realized. Cleanup brought quiet moments. David and Sarah strolled the paths, hands linked. Remember our first garden? That tiny balcony pot? David mused. Sarah laughed. It died in a week. This one's different, he said. We are too. Fall brought changes. Leaves turning. Air crisping. They prepared the garden for winter, mulching,
Pruning.
metaphorically. They insulated their relationship. Thanksgiving saw them together. Turkey roasted with garden herbs. Conversations flowed deep into night.
Winter tested them.
Snow blanketed the plot. But indoors, warmth prevailed. They read by the fire, planned spring plantings. Emily's school thrived. She started a gardening club. As snow melted, renewal stirred. They broke ground on expansions, a greenhouse for year-round growth. David proposed again. Simple. In the garden, will you? Sarah said yes. The unity plot, dormant but alive beneath, promised more blooms. Spring arrived in Oakwood like a gentle exhale, thawing the ground and coaxing life back into the garden. The unity plot erupted in fresh greens, the forget-me-nots first to flower, their blue petals a reminder of persistence. Emily, now 11, tended it with matured care, her hands steadier, her vision clearer. David and Sarah, engaged now, worked beside her, their rings catching sunlight. The wedding would be small, in the garden fitting. Daily life settled into harmony. David found a local job, trading city stress for a small-town peace. Sarah transferred schools, teaching closer. Weekends meant markets, buying seeds, sharing meals with Tom and Linda. The heart notes evolved into a family journal, entries chronicling joys and hurdles. One challenge, blending households, arguments over decor, routines. But they resolved in the garden, planting as they talked. Compromise is fertilizer, Emily quipped, earning laughs. The wedding day dawned clear. Guests gathered under a floral arch David built. Emily walked Sarah down the aisle. Petals scattered. Vows echoed. Through storms and sun. Will grow. Rings exchanged. Cheers rose. Reception featured garden bounty, salads,
Pies.
dancing under lights. Emily twirled between them. Honeymoon short. They returned to expand the family, adopting a dog, planting a tree for future kids perhaps. Years passed. The garden flourished. Emily grew into a teen, her club a community staple. David wrote his book, inspired by their story. Sarah traveled with them, adventures shared. The unity plot remained central, a living legacy. On anniversaries, they added elements, a fountain for flow, benches for rest. Reflecting one evening, Emily said, "A simple flower started it all." David nodded. "And kindness kept it going." Sarah added, "Love's the root." The story leaves a question. In a world of fractures, can one act of hope mend what's broken? The garden whispers yes, if you let it grow.